When the Minecraft chat reporting system was initially debuted in a snapshot, I had already decided that I was not going to make a video covering it despite my personal disliking of it. If I had chosen to make one at the time, not only would I have given zero time for the feature to mature, I also would have a stronger bias against it because I really had not dug deep into the facts. I do not want to post a video where I share biased opinions that I likely would no longer believe in within a couple of months. But this is not to criticize any videos that were uploaded shortly after the change had been made public. The majority of those videos made around that time still contain valid information that was crucial to the production of this video right here. But whether you agree with the opinions that I'm going to share throughout this video or not, it's important to understand that nobody should be judged personally or harassed in any way, shape, or form simply based off of their thoughts alone. This system was implemented in the 1.19.1 update for a reason, and on the surface, it's a good enough reason. Keep players safe and reduce toxicity. Protecting the player base and community of a game is important to let people thrive. If somebody feels that they are being harassed and nothing is being done about it, they should be able to find some way to feel safe within the game. But when you break down the mechanics of this system, it all begins to fall apart. That is why the vast majority of players are not on board with the introduction of this system to the game that seem to have been doing just fine without it. As far as I can personally tell, this is not a change that the majority feel will positively impact the game more than it will negatively do so. And so here we are, more than 3 months after the final release of this system. What is there to say now? Well, let's start where we should, right at the beginning. While many think that this story begins with the 1.19.1 update, it actually begins almost exactly 1 decade before that. In a snapshot for Minecraft 1.3.1, Mojang added the option to enable a feature called Snooper. The premise of this feature was pretty simple: collect anonymous computer and game information to send to Mojang and improve the game. The dedicated button in the options menu made it very clear that Mojang was allowing users to choose whether they wanted to share information or not. This was a feature that I was totally fine with Mojang implementing to the game because it gives complete freedom of choice on how you want your data to be handled. But as you will see throughout the rest of this video, freedom of choice is slowly becoming a thing of the past. Snooper would remain practically unchanged until it was removed from the game in snapshot 18W21A for the 1.13 update. Well, it was almost removed, but Mojang wouldn't do the final blow for a little while longer. In that 1.13 snapshot, Snooper was forcibly turned off by the game by default with no option to enable it. This was to comply with the European Union's GDPR, or General Data Protection Regulations, because the option did not comply. Since Mojang is a Swedish company, they must make changes accordingly. People understood this change, and nobody really batted an eye at the removal of data collection mechanisms within the game. Interestingly enough, the option to enable Snooper remained in the options.txt file of the game and could be modified. Something I noticed, however, is that even in 1.13 and above, despite the option being forced disabled within the settings panel, the option remained enabled by default in the options file. Booting up any version of the game until 1.18 and searching through the options file should show you that it remains enabled by default. You would think that this would have changed when Mojang completely removed the Snooper window in the game and made everybody think that it was fully gone. It's odd that they kept the option in the file, and the Minecraft wiki neither confirms nor denies the effectiveness of the option while enabled via the options file. Alright, well, enough with Snooper for now, let's move along. The first pre-release for Minecraft 1.16.4 added a new menu called the Social Interaction screen. This allowed you to completely block chat messages from certain users from appearing in chat if you did not want to see them. While not a negative feature for the game, there is a good chance that you have no idea that it ever existed. And even if you did, it's unlikely that you actually ever used it. This feature was just another feature that was added into the game to improve the player experience and keep people safe. This addition on its own is not a bad thing, and I think the fact that Mojang added the option to be able to block messages that are formatted differently by servers, or the like, shows that this is something that the developers did care about quite a lot. They didn't want you to think that it was another half-baked feature. The significance of these features compared to chat reporting is that Mojang had a good past with giving their users options to disable features that they didn't want. Don't want your data collected? Turn off Snooper. Uninterested in the social interaction screen? Don't use it. These features were optional, and that was the beauty of it. Well, at the time it wasn't the beauty of it because no one ever considered the removal of options as a concern because it hadn't happened. So what's next? Well, I'll just say that it isn't too positive. Next up, Minecraft would receive a pretty concerning update in a snapshot for 1.18. So do you remember how Snooper was removed in 1.13? Well, I bet you didn't know that it was added back to the game in snapshot 21W38A for the second part of the Caves and Cliffs update. First of all, it's officially now known as Telemetry, which is basically just a fancy word for data collection. Considering who Mojang's parent company is, I see why this was added back, but I won't go there quite yet. So that begs the question, why was it added back? Well, in Mojang's words, we are bringing it back to better understand our players and to improve their experience. Specifically, we hope to ensure stronger performance for the extremely heavy world generation in the second part of the Caves and Cliffs update later this year. Now, while this does seem like a good reason on the surface, it can be broken down quite quickly. First of all, why does Mojang suddenly need to connect this data to you directly? The old telemetry from 1.12 was completely anonymous and toggleable, and this implementation is infinitely more invasive than that. Instead of a user-friendly menu to disable it, well, you cannot do it. You cannot disable the telemetry feature. Mojang offers no way to turn it off. Plus, your Xbox user ID is now included in this data. This is directly related to your Microsoft account, meaning that Mojang can connect all of the data that they collect directly to you. Anyway, since Mojang said that this data was supposed to be used to increase game performance, did that actually happen? I would give it a resounding no. I compared the frame rate between the snapshot where telemetry was reintroduced and the initial release of 1.18 and saw no increase whatsoever. In fact, you can actually notice a lower overall frame rate if you look back and forth. While I only looked at the frame rate here, I'd argue that that's what most players care about. Playing in any modern version of the game with ideal video settings continues to be an issue for vanilla players, and we haven't seen a whole lot of progress. Look, Mojang, if you're going to collect your users' data, at least let them opt out. Even if you're going to keep the feature in the game, there should be options to anonymize it and disable it altogether. The Optifine mod has done exactly that, giving you options to disconnect it from your name and to disable it altogether. It seems that everybody except for Mojang knows how to do it right. We land on 1.19. Now, while chat reporting was not a thing in the game until 1.19.1, the original release included a prerequisite for it to become a thing later. In snapshot 22W17A, Mojang added a chat signing feature. I'll get into how this works later in the video, but it's not all that obvious to the average player as to what it does and why it's even there. They briefly mentioned it with the phrase signed chat, which probably confuses 99% of the readers, but they go into detail below. This is the first step in a process to provide more security and player safety features for in-game chat. Now, while I'd bet most people would have no idea how adding a bunch of crap to Minecraft chat messages could possibly make anyone any safer, the technical community was onto it pretty quickly. Since this new signature system was used to verify that a message was actually sent by the person rather than an impersonator, Mojang may be trying to implement a way to track people's chat messages. But at the time, that was just a theory. Nobody was fully sure what to expect, and most people overlooked this as another technical change that they didn't need to worry about. I mean, all most of you do is PvP on an 8-year-old version of the game, right? June 15th, 2022.
In the Java edition, players can now report each other for in-game chat.
I think that this is incredibly concerning.
I think a lot of trash talk and poor manners could easily be misinterpreted as harassment.
In my video on the chat changes, I said that it was mainly a Microsoft decision. It pretty much is a Mojang decision, we've come to learn.
This is a positive move. Nothing you like about Minecraft is going to change.
We've seen the Minecraft community band together like never before in order to go against chat reporting.
In the new Minecraft snapshot, you can report another player and get them banned permanently.
These categories are so broad that I literally cannot name a single player that hasn't done at least like 3 of these.
For the first 2 or 3 months after they introduced this new global banning system on Bedrock, the original article didn't even have a clear method of appealing listed anywhere.
Now the first thing I'm going to do is explain how chat signatures work, so let's get right into that. Now I'll try to explain this in a way that people can actually understand, but you're gonna have to stick with me. So when you start up your game, Mojang will issue a public key and a private key. For the purposes of simplification, I'm not actually going to go in depth as to what the differences between these are, but all that you really need to know is that you need both of these in order to verify your chat messages. Along with the public key, you'll receive a signature. When you attempt to join a server with all of these, which should happen by default, the server will go through a verification process in order to confirm the authenticity of these. In that process, the server will make sure that your signature was actually issued by Mojang. This whole system is much more complicated than that, but I don't want to be too technical for too long. The point is, your client and your game communicate keys and stuff to verify that your messages are actually being sent by you. That's basically what you need to know. If you really want to understand everything, check out Isastral's videos on chat signing and reporting. They are awesome, in-depth, and accurate videos on how it all works. But now that you have a good enough understanding of how the system behaves, let's talk about how to destroy it. Important update, critical announcement. So Mojang went ahead and made my life just a little bit harder, and they added this menu. Now this looks like a good menu, so you open it up and it basically is like a Snooper like menu. It's like that, and it gives you a list of what kind of data you're sending to them. This is just like a slightly more modern adaptation of that Snooper menu, let's be honest. Collecting this data helps us improve Minecraft by guiding us in directions that are relevant to our players. You can also send in additional feedback to help us keep improving Minecraft. So it has two events now. Instead of only sending data when you load the world, it also sends it when you unload the world. So there is no way to turn off data collection. Nothing's changed. The feature is not any better now. All you can do is change it from minimal to all, which gives you all of this data now. So there's also world load times and performance metrics. But yeah, if you're playing in Snapshot 22W46A or above, you do have a menu where you can control your telemetry a little bit. For whatever that's worth, it is a thing now. Anyway, now back to talking about chat reporting. Before I explain chat reporting, I would like to briefly touch on Microsoft account migration. In 2020, Mojang announced a switch in the way that you log into Minecraft. So before this, by default, you would create a Mojang account when you bought Minecraft. Since Mojang was acquired by Microsoft, they decided to announce a migration from Mojang accounts to Microsoft accounts. Also, way back in like 2012 and before, you would create Minecraft accounts instead of Mojang accounts, and those had their own migration thing, but those are beyond the scope of this video and would also become Microsoft accounts anyway. And by default, Microsoft accounts have been used to purchase Minecraft from December 2020 forward, although migration wouldn't begin for a long time after that due to a bunch of delays. So Microsoft accounts offer enhanced security over their older counterparts, and it's completely free. What's not to love? Well, Microsoft is notorious for tracking their users and collecting their data. The new 1.18 telemetry feature would only be effective on players using a Microsoft account, showing that tracking had already arrived. And at the time, you could still use a Mojang account if you did not want to migrate yet, but on March 10th, 2022, migration became mandatory to play the game. Okay, chat reporting time, here we go. Let's talk about how it works and how to report players. When you are connected to a server running 1.19.1 or above and your client is also on 1.19.1 or above, your messages are signed by default. This means that they are verified to have been sent by you, and you can be reported by other players that were on the server when you sent them, assuming that they are also on 1.19.1 plus and can use the chat reporting system. Other players will only be able to report messages that were sent when they were online, so they can't see past conversations. If a player feels that another player's messages are in violation of Minecraft's community guidelines, they can file a report including the infringing chat messages and the other messages surrounding them for context. If Mojang's team of investigators believes that a player's messages violated their guidelines and a report was filed against them, they may choose to ban that player's account from online play. Now, if your server is running a version below 1.19.1, messages will not be reportable because the server does not do anything related to chat signing. Similarly, if you're using 1.19.1 and you connect to a server like Hypixel, whose core is actually built off of Minecraft 1.7, no signing will happen. However, if you are banned on a modern version for a signed chat message that you sent, you will still be banned from playing on older versions of the game. You just won't get the fancy ban screen. So, for chat reporting to work, the client and the server must both be on 1.19.1 or above. Along with that, the server and client must be keeping chat messages signed. And assuming that all of these conditions are met, chat reporting will work as intended. Now unfortunately, just like Telemetry, Mojang doesn't actually let you turn chat reporting off. All they let you do is make it even stronger by enabling the Enforce Secure Profile option. I'll explain what this option does in a minute, but let's first talk about how these restrictions are completely arbitrary. You can disable these features, but of course you need to mod the game. I really feel like I should have mentioned this in my video where I talk about the best mods to use for 1.19, but I think that the crown claimer here is the No Chat Reports Fabric mod. Quite simply, this mod strips away all of the signatures and keys that Mojang uses to verify your chat messages. So basically, before 1.19, your chat messages looked like this. In 1.19.1, they look like this, which is much more complicated. And with the No Chat Reports mod, they look like this again. You see how there's no way to verify if this message is even real? Yeah, this mod makes the entire reporting system useless. If people can't prove that a message was actually sent by you, how would Mojang even be able to get away with implementing this system? If the mod is installed only on the client, the player will not send any signatures to the server. That means that vanilla players will see a little indicator notifying them that chat messages sent by this player are not secure. If the mod is only on the server, the clients will still send signatures, but the server will strip them away, making them unreportable when they hit the server. Ideally, the mod would be installed on both the client and the server. This means that neither the client nor the server are using any form of signing in. All chat messages are completely unverified. The mod also removes the not secure indicator, basically bringing back chat to how it really should be. But going back to the Enforce Secure Profile option, what does that do? Well, it requires every connecting player to have an attached signature, deflecting the No Chat Reports mod. The mod will give you a warning that the only way to join the server is to disable the mod, but you will be very aware that your messages are reportable on the server. Also, the No Chat Reports mod disables telemetry too, which is pretty cool. If you don't want to turn off chat reporting but still want to kill telemetry, the No Telemetry mod exists too. And I won't forget about the No Encryption Spigot plugin that can be used to disable chat reporting on servers that use plugins instead of mods. Anyway, now that we know how to disable it all, let's begin to truly break open every hole in this system. Knowing how much backlash this system received when it was added, of course people were going to break it in every way. While the No Chat Reports mod is a very tame way of ruining it, others had different goals in mind. Specifically, I'm going to talk about 3 exploits published by Notice. So let's start off with Gaslight, the most dangerous of the 3. The original Gaslight exploit released just over 2 weeks after the first chat reporting snapshot. Without getting too technical, the first Gaslight iteration exploited the way that signatures worked in order to be able to inject fake messages into your chat conversations. This is because this exploit allowed you to generate valid signatures for fake messages with dates that are in the past, meaning you can create fake messages that no one else would ever see and add them to the report as if they were real. So you could essentially fabricate a discussion after it had concluded. And along with that, you could also remove messages, essentially meaning that you could completely change the context of a conversation and report people for things that never happened. Mojang's response was adding blockchain technology to chat verification. What that means I won't go into, but it effectively patched Gaslight. So what better way to respond than creating a second exploit that took advantage of something else? Well, the way that Mojang patched Gaslight 1 is by taking into account previous chat messages when creating new signatures. What this means is that you will use packets received for every public and private message sent on the server to create a new signature. And not just private messages that you send and receive, but all private messages. Now, while you can't see what the messages actually say, you can see some other details about them, which we'll talk about shortly. Gaslight 2 allowed you to send yourself a private message with a potentially malicious field and a public message that another player will see. You can then report the player by removing the public chat message and using the private message as your fake one. Now, this isn't as simple as the original exploit, but it's showing what was possible. Gaslight 3, the next iteration, can be installed on the server, opening up a whole new world of vulnerabilities. Just for example, you can send a message and delete it at the same time, meaning that the other player will not see it. You can then send another message as a system message, like a server might do to create a fancy looking chat message, and then since those are unreportable, you can report the player for responding to the deleted message even when they didn't. I hope that made sense, but the Gaslight GitHub page has more information and you're welcome to read more about that. Now let's move on to Girlboss. This one is much simpler than the former, so I'll go over it quickly. Since you now receive packets for private messages sent between anybody, you can actually peep into who is having a conversation and observe what's happening. Like I mentioned before, you can't actually see the message contents, but this exploit still serves a purpose. And now for the last of the three, Guardian. This one allows you to act like you were never involved in a conversation. So do you remember earlier how I said that the game now takes into account previous messages before generating a new signature? Well, this mod sends messages with an empty last seen field, meaning that reports against what you said won't include any context at all because it looks like you were never involved with what anybody else was saying. Since this one is a little bit complicated, I may not have gotten everything spot on, but I'm attempting to simplify it all so that the casual observer can get a good idea of how the system has flaws. And now that you have a decent understanding of its flaws, I'm going to share my opinions on everything that I just talked about. The main reason why I do not personally like the telemetry implementation is the fact that you are not offered the choice to disable it. It's forced upon you. Unlike the original Snooper, you have to modify the game in order to turn it off. The same goes for chat reporting, and you know what, even Windows, your operating system. Since Mojang and Windows are both owned by Microsoft, this isn't really very hard to believe. You literally have to modify the Windows registry or use external tools to disable just one form of data collection. As you can see here, Windows offers choices to send required data and optional data. In both Minecraft and Windows, you can't turn off telemetry without modifications. Microsoft on its own is another factor that plays into the chat reporting debacle. This is the same company that uses their monopoly over the consumer OS market to force their unwanted software on their users. I don't want to use Microsoft Edge, but they pushed it to every single Windows computer running Windows 7 and up, along with shoving it in your face to get you to switch. Honestly, I'm not even surprised that telemetry is forced. Now back on topic, server owners should have a built-in option to disable secure chat. Instead of an enforce secure profile toggle, I think that there should be a chat security option. Setting it to 0 disables chat signing and reporting on that server, and users are warned about it when they're joining the server. Level 1 allows both signed and unsigned players to join depending on if they're using a method of disabling signing, and level 2 requires all players to have valid signatures. This means you do want to be protected by the chat reporting system. The point is, I shouldn't need to put the no chat reports mod onto my server in order to disable chat reporting there. I should be offered the option to turn it off with a built-in setting and then move on with my life. And the same goes for telemetry. I shouldn't have to install a client mod in order to disable data collection. I should be offered the opportunity to turn off telemetry or to anonymize it. I do appreciate how they give you a choice to send more data if you're the player who wants to do that, but what if I'm a player who wants nothing to do with it? That possibility seems completely left in the dust by Mojang. The best that us players can do right now is install the no chat reports mod and just forget about it, and that's what I'm going to recommend to anybody who does not like these features. And the second reason why I don't support this system is because of all the holes left open in it. Considering that I can use mods to fake chat context and report players unlawfully, peep into people's private conversations on servers that should normally be fully concealed, and remove all context around my messages in a conversation shows that this system is about as vulnerable as this glass jar that I put in the middle of a street. And unless these problems are patched, it's hard to argue for this system. Alright, the final reason why it's hard to look at chat reporting positively is considering its history on Bedrock Edition. Going into depth would take a while, so I will link a video in the description by the Mr. Epic about it. In short, the rules on Bedrock have been enforced very poorly. This does not necessarily mean that no one is getting banned. It means quite the opposite, actually. Many people have been banned when they should not have been. Not to mention the complete lack of an appeal system for a long time. And just to add insult to injury, some platforms would even lose access to their single-player worlds, preventing them from ever recovering all of the progress that they ever made. And unfortunately, I don't think that we're ever going back.